to use it as an example of the bullshit that's going on with the media here. There's
Oh,
some
yeah,
real
excellent.
choice stuff in there. Comes from news.com.au, so make sure you clean your computer after you open
Oh,
it up in your
God
browser.
damn it, dude. I don't need this. What is this?
I mean, they're the biggest website of news in Australia, so they have the data to prove it too, unfortunately. Let's talk about
So when did you want to cover this? I've read it. Should I just like read it out loud? Like what's the plan?
So basically, like, we're going to cover, how the media has been covering the election so far.
Yes.
There are going to be a few things within this particular article, which only just came out today, that will definitely hit on a few points that we're going to be making. Mainly with this article, this is reporting on a gaffe made by the Prime Minister. We'll talk about how his gaffe versus Albanese's gaffe was treated.
Oh yeah, excellent.
And there's also a lot of propaganda in here as well. And there may even be something worth talking about in regards to pork barreling, because, the final event of today was at a BMX track club in the electorate of Pierce, which I believe is a Liberal electorate.
Mm-hmm. So Scott Morrison was doing this?
Yes, he's announced a 1.6 million investment to redevelop a BMX track.
Yeah.
One of the young BMX riders said after shaking Morrison's hand, he was never going to wash his hand again. Hope that kid gets bubonic plague.
His hand's gonna fall off. Yeah.
Yeah. So there are a couple of things there, like, to sort of talk about, within that article, because it sort of hits on a few things that are probably going to make up the bulk of this episode, because this episode is mostly going to be, they've said really nothing so far. This is how the media has been covering it. And, we can dissect that a little bit.
All right. By the way, we've been live for a bit, so get your boys
that's
in.
okay.
I want to see the watching number go up, if possible.
Can do. Once it actually, yes, first week of the election. It's been gaffes after gaff after gaff, Tommy, this week. We are live. We're live without our faces. Can't see our beautiful faces.
Oh yeah, look, this is what they call the pre-show.
The preamble. I see. Have you enjoyed an Easter egg, Tommy? Part of this Easter season?
No, I hate sweets and festivities. So, Easter has been actually not that. It's been fun, but there's been way too much shit going on. There's too many events.
Yep.
Been happening in my life right now, and I'm like, I just want to get my videos out, but I can't do. I can't edit them from another place. I can't do it. So, yeah. What about you, Matthew? How's your Easter been?
I mean, I did my Easter the right way. We had a party, or sort of party, I guess, for my wife, just our little local Canberra guys meeting up and having fun like we normally do. You were there,
Oh yeah. That's right. I was one of those guys.
You were one of those guys. Then a friend of ours was around the last day, so we did some DC Comics deck building game. That's a lot of fun. Played some more board games, because I'm a big fucking nerd, and that's how I like to blow off steam. And what else did I do? Oh, I watched a controversial movie about Jesus from Martin Scorsese, and that's usually how I like to celebrate most Easters. Yeah, rebel to the very end, Tommy. Rebel to the very end. But I hope everyone is having a good break. I think, see, for me, what's really good is that my weekend sits on a Tuesday, Wednesday. Those are my roster days off. So I'm only halfway through my Easter long weekend, whereas everyone else is sadly finishing theirs up.
Yeah, I had to work over Easter. But what's cool is the shop closed at like 8 on Easter Sunday, and that was pretty cool because it's been a really long time since I've had that whole you work 1 hour and then the shop is closed and then you get to work just unimpeded. That was pretty good. Also, I sent you a link to the watch party. You need to join it so I can throwing these stinking videos that we need to watch.
Yes,
and eventually
yes,
I'll figure out a way. I'll figure out a way how to do it. So that, why won't it add the thing? I don't know what's happening now. So yeah, anyway, that was pretty good. Like I think it seemed like we got everything done early because naturally if no one's around, you just get it done.
Yeah, as I've said before, and I'll continue to say, when you're working in customer service, be it retail, hospitality, etc., those jobs are all far more tolerable when you don't have customers.
Okay, I can't
and
seem to
they're a
add
lot
any.
easier.
Trying to make another room. It's not accepting any of my my videos. Hold on a second. New room. There we go. Hopefully that'll have the thing we want. Okay, so welcome to the Modern Meltdown. I probably should use this one. I should remember what these things are. So the election was called like the day after our last show. So
yeah, which I knew it was going to happen. Like,
so I feel kind of a bit bad at having the title being, oh my god, they haven't, Jesus Christ, they haven't called the goddamn election yet. For it to be the day after is a bit melodramatic, But it is what it is.
A little bit. Yeah, look, as we said on our last stream, we knew it was going to be called. What has been... So my impression of it to start with, Tommy, no doubt you have yours as well. I've been somewhat disappointed in the mundanity of it all. I expected to hear at least some stupid shit from Scott Morrison. He's been relatively quiet. He's doing a lot of the panhandling stuff. He's kissing babies. He's taking photos with animals. There's a lovely one if you can find it online. I'm not sure where it is, but I did see someone on my feed the other day. It was there was a lady. She looked very, very excited about meeting the Prime Minister, but the dog was sort of looking very upset and worried about the whole situation as it was looking towards the camera. So I thought that was pretty funny. It's been a relatively unexciting week as far as politics go, and I wonder if maybe the fact that it is Easter long weekend has something to do about that, whether decisions were made to sort of have a nice, quiet, steady start to the election campaigns. They were still traveling everywhere. Like the Prime Minister went to Western Australia this week. Albo, he headed off. Was at Jimmy Barnes Blues Festival that they did.
Yeah, that was today.
So that was
they were in
today,
the Hunter.
So...
Both of them went to the Hunter, and they both went to Bass in Tasmania, something. So yeah, they've been around.
Yeah, they're getting out and about. They're doing the photo ops, but we're not really getting anything too exciting at the moment. The real interesting thing to look at, especially this week, is the media coverage for the Prime Minister and for Anthony Albanese. And when it comes to Labor and the opposition coverage, and they deserve equal coverage as far as I'm concerned, a good, fair, honest election deserves equal coverage from the media. That has not been happening whatsoever. And it's even not happening from our more progressive or left-leaning publications, unless you start, going into the indies like The Guardian. Crikey, for example, is another good one. But when it comes to the ABC, even they have been a little bit more standoffish than what they should be. Questions of bias has been raised about the ABC and what they could or could not be doing. And realistically, at the moment, for the Labor campaign, for Albanese's election campaign, the only place that he can really go to speak at the moment is the ABC, because no one else is really interested in giving Labor a platform. News.com.au, which is unfortunately one of the worst tabloid websites that you're going to come across. It's owned by News Corp, which is owned by Murdoch, and it is one of the most read news sources in this country. And their coverage has been just despicable. We started off the week with probably a major gaffe. Now, Tommy, I know you got sort of your plan for how this stream will go. So do you want to talk about the gaffe now, or are we saving it?
No, yeah, we'll just go up front. You say you'll have a plan, but clearly, given how we started, I don't have that big a plan. But we'll just jump. We'll just jump in because
Yep.
I've been trying to find. It's hard to find footage of the gaffes in their full context because all of the
Yep.
news shows clip them out, and then searching for them after the fact is difficult. But we'll just give it a shot. I've got this. This is from ABC 7:30. It's like 6 minutes long. I don't know exactly where it's going to be, but I assume they'll do something stupid in terms of the journalism. So we'll just let this play out, I think. Oh, whoa, what's going on there, buddy? Okay.
Budget night without any talk of offset.
Greater than $300 billion.
$1,000 more in petrol, $800 more in childcare, $2,000 more in rent.
It is a $2.1 trillion economy. That's right, 12 zeros.
Last week, $1.80.
Election campaigns are a rare combination of being bludgeoned relentlessly with numbers that probably don't mean all that much to you and an escalated political savagery. They are also not for the faint-hearted. The shift in intensity of the way gaffes are perceived once a campaign has started is easy to illustrate.
What's the national unemployment rate?
National unemployment rate at the moment is, I think it's 5.4. Sorry, I'm not sure what it is.
You
The
almost had
reaction
it,
to
dude.
what was, by any assessment, an appalling political lapse was predictably savage. And that was on top of not knowing the official cash rate. Being in campaign mode, this was framed both as a reflection of Mr Albanese's unfitness for office and possibly the beginning and end of his election campaign.
Do you concede that you've got less chance of winning the election today than 2 days ago?
Can you understand the criticism that you may have lost?
All right, so let's hold up just a minute here. As you know, let's talk about this. Let's talk about the framing of the media, because this is absolutely perfect for discussing that that side of this. No one loses the election in their first day. No one loses an election over gaffing those two particular numbers, especially if you walk up to an everyday Australian and say, hey, you know, what's the cash rate? Off the top of my head, I don't know. Hey, what's the unemployment rate? I don't know that either, right? Average Australians don't care about that. What average Australians care about right now is their cost of living, a very bleak future, and little to be optimistic about. That is what they're mostly concerned about. Now, what we're seeing here is you're seeing a bunch of journalists posing a question, but they're not really posing a question. They're posing their headlines for tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right. And that's a problem, right? Because that's not what journalism is meant to be. A journalist is meant to represent the people. So especially in the case of the ABC, now there are definitely a lot of different reporters there. I'm not going to just shit on the ABC. They do a better job than most. But the ABC is government funded, and it's funded with the intention that they will be asking questions that are relevant to us, to the general Australian public.
We are the customer.
We are the customer. So we want them to go up to a politician and say, it's now costing Matthew an incredible amount of money to fill up his car so he can go to my job. I would like to know what's going to happen with that. You know, what are the ramifications for that? I would like to know if I will ever be able to afford an electric vehicle. My brother would like to know if he'll be able to afford a house. These are the questions that the Australian public has that the ABC, because we pay them, should be asking those questions. Now, when it comes to the rest of the journalists, if you could even call them journalists, because let's be honest, you know, whether you're looking at Nine, Fairfax, or News Corp, I think you'd be hard pressed to find a journalist amongst any of them. But all they're doing there is they're gearing up for their next headline. So they're not asking questions, they're creating a narrative, which is not what a journalist is meant to do. They're meant to gather information and then represent that information in proper context. So yeah, I just wanted to point that out because part of this election campaign while the majority of it is going to be about talking about different policies, different offers, which neither candidate has really shown us what, they haven't come in hard, because I feel like they've been campaigning for the last 6 months anyway. So we sort of really know their policies, where I think they may have shot themselves in the foot a little bit there because they're not able to grab the media's attention. If Albanese this week, for example, announced their free TAFE plan to get more people into trade schools to get them qualified, then I think that would have been a better announcement to save for this week, rather than drip feeding through all their policy, because now it's going to be very, very difficult for them to gain headlines, especially considering they're in a very, very difficult media environment anyway. But I just want to point out as well that the Australian voter needs to be smarter than they've ever been before, because the journalists are not working for us. They're working for their corporate paymasters, or in the case of the ABC, they're working for the powers that be, and the powers that be are not interested in a progressive government coming through, even though the ABC does do a better job than most, just to state that again. So I just thought I'd take a minute to point that out.
Yeah. Okay, so with the journalism, I don't mind, like, the point of gotchas isn't inherently bad. My issue, like, journalists are obviously going to ask those kinds of questions or whatever, right? Like, that just makes sense. Like, you expose Morrison for being out of touch by doing the whole cost of living thing, right? But what's key, and we won't bring this up in this actual, the clip here, but every time someone compares this gaffe to what Scott Morrison did, they always bring up the fact that Scott Morrison didn't know the cost of bread and milk and fuel, maybe. Usually what is always left out, which is really interesting, is that the point of the question was to expose him on the cost of the rat tests. Because at that time, when he did that press conference address, there was this massive shortage of rat tests. No one knew how to get them, and they were really goddamn expensive. And he didn't know the answer to that question. And that was really important. And that should be something that you should know, because that is, like, specifically something that your government is doing. Whereas in this instance, this gaffe, for one thing, like, you saw it there, right? He said 5.7, and then he says 5.7 so he almost had it. If he just said 4%, he would have been fine, right? But I think what's happening is it's the first day of the campaign. Anthony Albanese is clearly nervous, which is why he kind of stammers a little bit there. And the other thing is, he's probably got like 50,000 different numbers in his head that he has to try and remember, because there's gotchas from every side in every angle, right? And he probably had a bunch of other stuff memorized and wasn't as focused on this. So I think that's why what happened. But that's understandable. During an election campaign, gaffes and whatever they're a fact of nature, because the press are going to do that to you. And that's part of the game. But it's what happens after that, which is, I think, completely egregious. But we'll just watch the rest of this video and we'll see if it gets covered at all by 7:30, which it probably won't. But yeah.
Lost all credibility on these issues now.
Can you promise Australians that you are across the details of the economy?
I made a mistake. I've owned it. I wish it hadn't happened.
Sure, he didn't know the number, but he didn't miss it by that much. He missed it by that much.
But let's compare yesterday's gaffe in the white-hot heat of the first day of an election campaign with another event a couple of months ago, when the PM was asked about the price of milk, petrol and rapid antigen tests.
Oh, shit.
Well, let me talk to you about...
They actually brought the rapid antigen testing.
A full 2 minutes later, he conceded.
Now, I'm not going to pretend to you that I go out each day and I buy a loaf of bread and I buy a litre of milk.
I'm pretty sure we covered this on the first episode, actually, of this thing.
We did. Yes,
the story ran for 24 hours as an illustration that Mr Morrison was out of touch. Back then, of course, almost all the focus of the media's attention was on the Prime Minister and the government, as it tends to be between election campaigns. Now Anthony Albanese is being exposed to a sudden onslaught of attention. And it has not been a great way to start a campaign, particularly for a leader who is not well known to voters, talking on a subject that slots neatly into the government's argument that he is inexperienced, and into its economic story.
He thought unemployment had a 5 in front of it. not even a 4 in front of it. And it's going to a number with a 3 in front of it.
The government capitalised today on Albanese's slip by promising to create 1.3 million jobs in the next 4 years. That's roughly in line with what you would expect based on the budget forecasts. And it is also just an update on previous forecasts made in the December budget update of 1 million jobs based on a post-COVID economic bounce back. They are the jobs underpinning the current unemployment rate, which Anthony Albanese couldn't nominate, and further improvements to come. But the opposition leader had at least received some support yesterday from a perhaps unexpected quarter.
Is that a serious question?
Yeah, Anthony Albanese didn't know the unemployment rate.
Yeah, well, I'm not, okay, well, Anthony Albanese didn't know the unemployment, all right. So what?
And the former PM has some experience in such things.
I didn't actually see that. That's incredible, dude.
Yeah. So let's talk about that a little bit. And we also do have to pause these videos a little bit more frequently because YouTube will demonetize us if we don't. Because we, well, not YouTube, but the ABC will.
Well, they did it for one of our videos, but I think that's because they played a bunch of music and stuff. I don't, like, the other ones are fine. I mean, look, I wouldn't worry about it. But anyway, yeah.
So, so they're about to talk about this, but I do want to bring it up. They did ask John Howard about this. John Howard made a similar gaffe on a current affair, I think back, I mean, I could be wrong about this. I think it was 97 or maybe
a million years ago.
Yeah, it was quite some time ago. He is right in saying, look, so what? When you look at gaffes and bringing up like the fact that they brought up the earlier gaffe with the Prime Minister and they're trying to paint it the same way. The Prime Minister not understanding the basic costs of Australians is a problem, and it's a reason why people react negatively. I know how much milk costs because I buy it. I know how much bread costs because I buy it. I personally, Matthew Soul, I don't have a great grasp on what the unemployment rate is all the time. I don't have a great grasp on what the cash rate is. It's not information that it's relevant to my everyday, and therefore it's not in front of my face all the time. I think it's a conflation when you're comparing those two gaffes. You've got one leader who's turning around and saying to the Australian public, I don't understand, or I don't have a conception of, and I'm not going to pretend to understand the costs of the average Australian, which is something that if you're a political leader, you're going to want to pretend anyway, because the easiest way to spin that would be like, look, milk is a fluctuating thing. It's a fluctuating product. I don't know what it is exactly, but I tell you what, Australians are being hit in the purse every day. And I do know that. That's an example of how you would spin yourself out of that discussion. Albanese also could have done that with his gaffe, but he didn't. He had the opportunity to do that. He could have turned around and said, look, I don't know those numbers off the top of my head. I should know them. I've made a mistake here, but I will tell you this, Australians care more about their cost of bread and milk, which is what my opponent was unable to produce for you a few months ago. That's me saying that with hindsight and with probably a little bit more experience and doing a bit of spin because I have worked with, Fairfax for a few years. I sort of know how they work. But yeah, I feel like it's such a bizarre conflation here. And again, if you walk down the street, you talk to an average Australian, ask them what the cash rate is, most people aren't going to be able to tell you, but they will be able to tell you how much a liter of milk costs. And I'm not trying to be an apologist.
Matt, shut up.
Sorry, go ahead.
I just want to say, and I think one of the things that I like about Anthony Albanese, and I've seen this after watching a bunch of his press conferences more, is that he's too honest. He's like, he plays this game as if, like, when he gets asked questions, most of the time he just answers them fairly straightforwardly. He might not provide all the details if he doesn't have them, right? But he will just, like, generally answer the question. What Scott Morrison does a lot, and what we're saying that Anthony Albanese should do, is basically, like, spend, like, a tiny bit of it denying it or doing whatever, and then you deflect onto the other person.
Exactly.
And I was thinking about this, and I was like, one of the really good ways to deal with this is to just, anytime he gets any questions about anything, you can just deflect that onto the Liberal Party and their failures. Because really, that's what you want to do in this campaign. You want to just keep banging on about how terrible they are at everything. But Anthony Albanese is a straight shooter. He's like, yeah, this is the answer to that question. And I like that about him as a person. I think that qualifies him much better for the job, but it makes him worse at, especially comparatively in terms of the campaign.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
'96 election, he was opposition leader. The centrepiece of his pitch and the party's campaign launch was a family tax package. The coverage had been positive, but the day after the launch, almost 4 weeks into the campaign, was another matter.
A series of stumbles today stalled opposition leader John Howard's campaign.
Once your family income is over $70,000 a year, you do not get the benefit of the increase in the tax threshold.
But that's not what the newspapers were saying this morning.
In the footage of the interview, the hand of Howard's press secretary can be seen slipping him the details of his own policy.
I bet you're going to give the fellow who found that press clipping a rise, eh?
Well, he's a very good worker.
He didn't even know the policies himself, and I don't know how he expects anyone else to know them if he doesn't.
But the 1996 election turned out to be a referendum on an ageing Labor government. John Howard won. And sympathy among opposition leaders only goes so far, it seems.
Could be.
By today, Howard was singing a different tune about Mr Albanese's lapse.
He should have known that figure. Let's not muck about. Should have. Anybody who wants to be Prime Minister should be on top of those figures.
Yeah,
Anthony Albanese has 2 jobs to do.
Someone fucking called him up and was like, yo, what are you doing? We have a campaign to win.
Yep.
Switch the line. Like, it's just...
Yeah, for whatever reason, John Howard still feels indebted to the Liberal power brokers. I don't know why. I thought he was... Look, honestly, John Howard had an elderly moment on the other day where I don't know if you have a lot of older people in your life, Tommy, but I've noticed when people get older that their filter starts to drop a little bit and you start to get real grandpa, as opposed to maybe the grandpa that's had to stay quiet for a few years. And John Howard had that moment when he was approached by the media. He'd obviously been out shopping and was suddenly, approached and just said, like, so what? Because he was being honest, because in that moment, he didn't have a line to back up the Liberal Party. So he's just like, so what? He forgot himself for a minute. And then obviously the Liberal power brokers have called him up and said, we need you to talk to the Australian because we need you to talk down Anthony Albanese, which, he'll have to square with that as a person. It's not a great sign of moral character.
He's loyal to the Liberal Party. It makes sense. It is what it is. I think he'll do that every time, as long as he's. I assume because when he's reminded of it, he'll do it.
Yep, totally.
In this campaign, make a positive case for being elected, but also ruthlessly remind people of why the polls show the PM and his government are so unpopular. Just as Scott Morrison is ruthlessly going after the opposition leader. Maybe having to do both jobs is why Mr Albanese and his frontbench seem not to have quite unleashed the political mongrel needed in a campaign.
Sledging me, making criticisms of me, seeking to attack me over these last 3 years, that's not a substitute for having an economic plan. It's not a substitute for knowing the things you need to know about what's going on in the Australian economy. Today,
Scott Morrison says he doesn't want the election to be a referendum. That is, just a judgment on his government, but for voters to make a choice. There are 6 long weeks before they have to make one.
All right. Yeah. So that was the moment.
One of the things at the end of that video that's really good to point out as far as what the Liberal Party's election campaign is going to be about is the fact that their election campaign is, we are going to distance ourselves from our leadership as much as possible, which is a very unique strategy when it comes to trying to get elected. A lot of people say in this country that you are voting for the party, you're not voting for the leader. While on paper that is correct, it's not. People generally vote for the leadership of a party, especially when the leader is so down in the polls. But, the strategy from the Liberal Party head Q at the moment is we need you, Mr. Scott Morrison, to distance yourself as much as possible from us so that we can say, look, no, you're voting for a party. You're not voting for me. And already like turning around and saying, oh, you know, if they start ripping into me for the last 3 years of poor management as far as my role has been concerned, that they're, you know, that's no substitute for them having no economic vision. Yeah. Which is just hilarious to me. And what the Labor Party needs to do is hammer home just how shit he is.
Yeah, that's in his line. Like it's insufferable, dude. Like I watched his press conference when he was in, I think that was when he was in Tasmania. And that was the one time where I've actually seen the journalists actually try and dogpile the PM on something. They were like, what's the deal with the ICAC? So they were each and every one of them were hounding him on that issue. And every single time, he'd always just not really answer the question. Or he'll be like, oh, look, we have our thing, and it got rejected. It's like, well, why didn't you just, you know, put it up for a vote, right? Isn't the whole point of Parliament that you can put the thing up and change it and all that kind of stuff? And it's like, oh, we got our plan. You could blame Labor. He always finds a way to blame Labor for it. And it's every single goddamn question, and he waffles on for ages, and it's just insufferable. And I don't know how people, I guess it's because people don't see it, right? Because the media doesn't cover it, but it's, oh my God, I just get really angry. So yeah, this whole thing, watching this play out is not very good for my blood pressure. But I'll go on to, yes.
Just before you jump past the ICAC thing, that was one, you know, policy that they've announced essentially this week. The Labor Party has said under the Labor Party, they'll be getting an ICAC, which will be an investigative body into political corruption. They want it up and running by Christmas should they be elected. Whereas the Morrison government has said essentially under us, there will be no ICAC, which for me simply says, if you're not going to be holding people within the highest office to this country accountable, then you are fostering, if not endorsing, corruption. That is as simple as that is. Whereas Labor has come out very strongly this week, and this is a point that should be talked about more in the media. Of course, it won't be. But Anthony Albanese has said they want an ICAC up and running by Christmas. Whether that's achievable or not, I don't think so. It takes a long time to build that sort of government agency, but at least they're saying we will get this done in the smallest amount of time possible. So I think that's a strong platform for Albanese. However, for everyday Australians, I don't think that's going to reach them as much. It reaches me, but I'm a little, you know, a bit more politically in tune. It's not going to reach every single Australian, but at least it's a policy announcement, and it's at least something that Scott Morrison has had to counter, and his counter was, we're not going to counter it.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, is like, it should be like every Australian should be aware of that as a concept, like how, like, basically all the states have corruption commissions to stop politicians from being scummy shitbags, and at the federal level that there isn't one, and maybe there should be. But again, like the press isn't going to do that. And as we'll see, like this is, so Anthony Albanese is the topic if you look up The Australian. And this was April 11. This is when the GAFFE happened. And you can just see how many goddamn stories they have on this one issue, which again is a nothing burger. Like we watched it and he was just like, oh yeah, I'll admit to it. And he almost said the number and it was basically just nerves. But they just keep hammering it. Still the 11th. Look, like, and I gotta say, like, I was watching ABC News Breakfast, and what they do is they go through all of the headlines of the newspapers in for that day, and every single one of them, like this, what I'm showing now is just from The Australian, but it was from The Australian, The Telegraph, the Sydney Morning Herald, all of those newspapers had this, like, basically this image and something about the GAFFE, and I was like, wow, media, like, you're basically in lockstep trying to take down this man. That coverage of every single newspaper in the country covering this one GAFFE is incredible, because it's like, yo, did this guy, like, is this guy a serial killer? Like, people died that day. Yeah. And usually the consensus when it comes to newspapers is if it bleeds, it leads.
Yep.
So they're saying so this for them is the equivalent of that. That's how shit our media is in this ecosystem. And just before I give it over to you, Matt, it just keeps going. The next day was also filled with this kind of stuff as well. One of the things, like the ABC is heralded as the bastion of like fair and balanced journalism and all that shit, right? But I was trying to go to sleep, and then the ticker comes up, right? The lower third or whatever they call it, the little chevrons. And it was like, there was one that was like, yeah, he did a gaffe, okay? And then the next one was Scott Morrison unveils $1.2 million job guarantee or something after Albanese gaffe. And I'm like, what the fuck does the gaffe have to do with the first part of that goddamn sentence? Right? Yep. It's basically, we're just going to take another opportunity to attack the Labour Party.
Yep.
There is no business like putting those things together. Like that's not journalism. And as we see in this kind of an example, this is what they do. Scott Morrison's security team had been rushed to hospital after crashing off the road. It comes after Anthony Albanese has backflipped on offshore detention centers. What does the second sentence have any relation to do with the first one?
I don't know.
It's ridiculous, dude. But they have to keep bringing, this is the thing. They have to keep bringing in Labour's faults and like these tiny little things wherever they goddamn can. And it's just goddamn infuriating. And it has me very worried that this election won't go Labour's way, even though they were leading the polls and all that other kind of shit. Because if they can just keep spinning the narrative, your average punter, that's all they're going to get, and that's all they're going to think about. And it's just, Jesus Christ, dude. I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Look, honestly, look, I think your fears are completely founded. To further illustrate your point, when the gaffe happened, news.com.au had 3 stories. They had their primary picture was Anthony Albanese. Next to it, Anthony Albanese, underneath Anthony Albanese, which is just absolutely fucking ridiculous for this sort of thing, especially considering the lack of coverage of that day. Just to further illustrate that point, there was a domestic terrorist attack, if you want to call it that, but it was a mass shooting event that happened in New York. Usually those sort of things, as Tommy's said, when it comes to the news, if it bleeds, it leads, which basically means tragedy always leads to front page stories. On top of that, there were also developments that were occurring in the Ukraine. So there was plenty of news to cover that day. But all of the tabloids decided, no, the gaffe was the most important thing. The fear that the correct information is not reaching the Australian voter, that people aren't, getting information to what the Labor policies are, it's a founded one. It's happening in front of our eyes, and it is very scary. Could this affect the way people vote? It could. I'm not going to say it's not, but I'm also going to say that at the moment, this country is so disenfranchised, I should say, with the current political, with the current government, with the current politics of the current government, that I think regardless of who the leader is, and this could actually play into Albanese's benefit, I think regardless of who the leader is, I think you're going to see a massive protest vote at this election. And that just means any single party has potential to gain seats in this election. I think that's probably what is scaring the Liberals the most. And I know, Tommy, like you'd prefer Labor to have just a massive swing as they move into, if they win this election. I don't think you're going to see that. I think you're honestly going to see a hung parliament. And I think you're going to see a massive amount of rejection voting. I think you're going to see parties like probably the Greens Party will pick up a few seats. The Reason Party has potential there. Palmer United does, but then of course they'll lose their senator after about 6 months, which is generally what happens to Palmer's piece of shit party. And then One Nation may pick up 1 or 2 of the anti-vaxxer votes. So I honestly think that, you're going to see the amount of protest voting that's going to occur is probably going to mitigate at least some of the biased journalism that we're seeing. But it is a genuine concern to have. It is going to have some impact, whether it's on the higher or lower scale. It will absolutely have some impact.
Yeah. No, my issue with protest votes and like that is people who generally protest vote in that way, because like the left have been doing this for a long goddamn time, okay, and they'll vote Greens. And the issue is okay, a protest vote, like theoretically, it should be against whatever government is in charge, right? And all of this blame about the Labour Party being the same is ridiculous. They haven't been in power 10 years. They are the goddamn people who gave us fucking Medicare, for fuck's sake, right? They are not the goddamn same.
Yep.
But the perception is there. And what happens is people will be like, okay, they're the same. I'll vote. I don't want to vote Labour or Liberal. And then Labour will lose seats where they shouldn't. And in the places where these protest votes go in Liberal seats, they just go to like a Liberal, another like neoliberal, like or someone like United Australia Party people who will just vote down the line for all of Scott Morrison's or the Liberal Party's agenda anyway. So you're not actually achieving anything. Like if you go vote Green in a Labor seat, you're basically just if we're just doing the whole leftist thing, right, as a unified block, you're basically just like the balance of power doesn't shift. Because it's a left, because Labour is ostensibly on the left, and you're just making that a Greens. What you really need to do is basically make the Liberal Nationals lose. It doesn't matter who else goes in there, as long as that happens and Labour doesn't actually lose that much power. Because the more power Labour loses, the more they're fucked in the long term. And constructively, you can't do anything, right? Even if you have a hung parliament, that only works if Labour is in power. If the Liberals are in power, you're fucked. You're not going to get anything. It's going to be just as corrupt and just as shit in a hung parliament.
There's also going to be another problem as well, Tommy. Usually when protest voting occurs, you also see votes head towards groups like, the Hunter Shooters Party, the Fisher Shooters Party, rather. You'll see votes headed towards like the Car Enthusiast Party, the Pirate Party, the Sex Party that reformed into the Reason Party. Full disclosure, I'm actually a member of the Reason Party. I like their policies. You are going to see that happen. How does the Labor counteract that? Well, a lot of political advertising really is going to be one of their best options at this point. They need to be really hammering at home on social media. They need to be hammering at home on YouTube. How do you do that? How can you as a person actively support that? Become a financial leader, become a financial member of your political party, and that means that you're donating to them so that they have the war chest to go in and fight these campaigns. They have the war chest to print up flyers. You can go volunteer with your local Labor outfit and help hand out flyers. If progressive Australians want to know how they can get out there and how they can create influence, how they can help the Labor Party and maybe avoid some of this bias that the media is pushing, that is a way that they can do it. Every individual can actually contribute financially to the party of their choice if they so chose. But yeah, look, you are right. And like I said, it could be even worse. You could get some of these silly Mickey Mouse parties end up in power. It's happened before. The last time it really took off was during the Gillard era, where we saw a bunch of these like made up parties. The senators came in, lasted about 6 months and then pissed off, which is exactly what happened with the motoring enthusiast party. He ended up as a sitting MP, lasted about a year, and then I think he was able to resign anyway, which is what he did. And barely showed up when he was required to show up. So yeah, protest votes can split the majority even worse, and it can allow for some real shit to come in.
Yeah.
And speaking of minor parties.
And also, like, generally speaking, minor parties, you don't. Well, I guess like since the preferences are determined by the people most of the time, it's mostly okay. I was going to talk about how preference flows might affect that, because you don't know who they're going to preference, right?
Yep.
But really, it's if you're doing your due diligence and voting for those people anyway, then you should know who to preference.
Yeah.
But yeah, like there's a lot of for me there's a lack of transparency in voting independent and doing the third party route that I'm generally not in favor of. Because if you think about it, if one of those people gets into power, when the Greens or whoever get into power or hold the balance of power, they act very authoritarian on whatever agenda or ideological basis that they have. Whereas any agenda or anything that the Labor Party wants to get across, the entirety of the Labor Party needs to vote on it, right?
Yep.
So you hear a lot of attacks where they're like, oh, look at Cole Fitzgibbon, and it's like, dude, he is more right wing than the rest, but he took the Hunter away from the Libs for one, and two, the party votes for the whole thing. So even if he isn't one like right wing element, the lefty party, the leftist element will vote the other way. So that seems, to me, more democratic than having an independent just do whatever they want. Because again, that's the mandate in which they perceive their role to be in Parliament.
I don't think it's too far of a stretch to say that when the Greens came into power during the Gillard government, that their abuse of that power helped to take down the Gillard government. It helped to water down some of their reforms. It stopped good legislation going through because they wanted more extreme legislation going through. So, when the Greens did come into power all the way back during the Gillard era, they fucked it up and set us back a long, long time. So, yeah.
So I want to, if you head down into the watch party, Matthew, I will play the clip. This is Adam Bant. This is Adam Bant at the National Press Club, and he had this whole thing. I watched the speech. One of my issues with it is that he just keeps attacking Labor. I'll get into that a little bit later, but I think where we'll play it will be the point where he gets asked a question.
Not only their lives worse, but their health worse, and it is affecting their families and their children. We need to lift income support payments to $88 a day. We can afford it,
Where is it?
And that is a key part of the Greens platform.
Okay, it's coming up.
Annabelle Hennessy.
Hi, Annabelle Hennessy from the West Australian newspaper. Thank you for your address today. In the 2019 election, the convoy Bob Brown led to Townsville was blamed for costing Labor votes in Queensland. The Greens also famously voted against the carbon pricing scheme 10 years ago with the Liberal government.
Yep.
What would you say to those who might feel that your party has actually been counterproductive to the climate change movement by not taking what some would consider a more pragmatic approach? And do you accept the fact that there are people who are employed in the coal, gas and mining industry who naturally are going to feel an economic anxiety about potential losses of their own jobs?
So one thing that I want to talk about for this person who asked this question, you asked too many questions. And what we'll see happen is there's a main core to that the question, which was about them not being as pragmatic, and we'll see he's basically just going to ignore it.
Look, I've been to Western Australia, to Queensland, to New South Wales with a simple message. We need to support coal and gas workers through the transition, but just because we stop mining coal and gas doesn't mean we're going to stop mining. Right? The best job in many places for a coal worker is another mining job, because we are blessed in Western Australia and in Queensland with so many of the minerals and metals that we're going to need to build batteries, electric cars, wind turbines, all of the things that we need in a zero pollution society. So we can grow jobs in mining, in processing, in minerals, but it's coal and gas that we need to get out of. People are looking at what's going on and they understand change is happening, but Liberal and Labor aren't telling them the truth. During elections, Liberal and Labor turn up in mining towns in high-vis vests and say, oh, look, everything's all right, we can keep mining coal and gas into the 2050s and meet our climate targets, but it is a lie. And workers know they are being lied to. And so our message to those workers, especially this time around, has been we have got a plan to make sure that workers in the coal sector don't lose incomes, have their wages guaranteed for the next 10 years as we make the transition, and will support the businesses that will grow in these places to move people over. And that might include someone in Western Australia going and working on lithium rather than gas. Like, these opportunities are there. And on jobs, I would say, what about the tens of thousands of jobs in Western Australia in farming, in wine, in tourism, that are dependent on a healthy environment? Like, what is going to happen to the Margaret River region and the southwest if when rainfall patterns permanently change and when bushfires become a regular feature? What happens to the tourism industry around this country and the 60,000 plus jobs in Queensland that are dependent on a healthy Great Barrier Reef if Labor and Liberals' targets are met and the reef is gone forever? Like, we have to defend jobs. And the way to defend jobs and to set all industries, including mining, up for the future is to make the switch and look after workers. But it starts by telling the truth. And at the moment, Liberal and Labor are refusing to do that. And as a result, what we're seeing in New South Wales is corporations saying, we're going to close this coal-fired power station earlier than expected, and there's no plan to support the workers and their communities. So I agree. It's no wonder that people are feeling anxious. It's because Liberal and Labor aren't telling them the truth. And they can see it. They can see that change is coming and people are looking for governments to step in and provide support. We've done industry transition in this country well before, and we've done it terribly. And on the climate crisis, Liberal and Labor are doing it terribly because they're refusing to tell the truth. And that is going to hurt workers and communities, and that's what the Greens are trying to stop.
Yeah, clap. Anyway, so this person doesn't do anything else, and it's just he just completely dodged the first part, and to me, the most important part of that question. And I think you'll notice, Matt, and this diatribe that I'll be going on maybe in a bit, but like, notice how many times he says Liberal and Labor. He just can't help just bringing both of them into whatever complaints he has into the narrative.
It's a very strange thing, and I'm going to talk about it in a little bit of historical context here. The Greens very rarely have a say in our political system unless a Labor government is in charge, traditionally speaking. Again, as I said earlier, it's what brought down the Gillard government, the last sitting Labor government. So you're right, like, they don't address that. They don't address that they're obstructionists. But at the end of the day, you wouldn't anyway. Like, that would be bad political spin to acknowledge that, unless you had a really good answer of, oh, well, these are reasons why we aren't that. But I think, standing on his feet, he'd have a hard time finding some sort of spin to do that. So,
look, it's fair. Like, I was like, oh, that's an excellent question. And for me, I was expecting him to say something like, yeah, we made mistakes in the past, right? I'm pretty sure it was under different leadership at that time as well. So he can have that as cover. And he'd be like, usually how you handle those questions is you just do some vague hand waving where you're just like, yeah, we'll endeavor to be more pragmatic in the future when we negotiate with Labor about stuff or whatever, right? Because there is no negotiating with the Liberal Party. Like, you can just use these as an attack for the Liberal Party. But again, my issue with Adam Bandt at this current point in time and the Greens is that they're and he says this during the speech, his goal is to get rid of the Liberal National Party from power, okay? And yet, at the same time, throughout this speech, also, and during plenty of times during that question, he keeps throwing the Labor Party in there, right? He says the Liberal Labor Party will lie to you and about their targets and stuff like that. Labor has been very clear about their 2050 targets, right? Everyone has that as a target that's brought down by the Paris Accords, I think it was, or whatever, right? And Labor have set to that. And the difference is, the thing that makes it so that it's conceivable that you would think of them as allies, that they haven't been in power to be able to do anything.
Yep.
And that's it. So it's very disingenuous for me to keep, from my perspective, that he keeps throwing Labor in there and lumping them in with the Liberal Party, again, as if they were the goddamn same, when they're not. If his goal is to get rid of the goddamn Liberal Party, he should be spending much more time just not mentioning the Labour Party and attacking the Liberal Party and not trying to like take away Labour seats. But he's doing that on many occasions. Like Friendly Geordies brings that up in his videos. So
it's
yeah,
it's an excellent point you raise there, Tommy, and I can't understand the conflation. I don't understand how that's advantageous to them.
because they want power. They just want to have more seats.
Yeah.
Like their goals supersede their individualistic like party ambitions supersedes the betterment of the country. And we saw that again before with the emissions trading scheme not getting passed.
Yes.
They didn't vote for it because ideologically they were like, no, it has to be this target, it has to be this high. And Labour were probably like, yo, bitches, not going to goddamn work under, the various circumstances that we have going on with the economy, with our labour force and all that other kind of shit. We can't do that. How about like a lesser one? And they're like, no. Okay.
And it's a massive problem. 12 years ago, if we had actually seen that scheme being put into place, we'd be in a much better position than we are today. And again, that is because of what the Greens did. The Greens also damaged the Labour reputation. It is again voting against Labour. Voting against Labour is sometimes perceived as a vote against the Greens party. On top of that, the Greens is also fighting a massive misinformation campaign through social media. The people blame the Greens for the lack of hazard reduction burning. As a Royal Fire Service person, I can tell you that's absolute bullshit. They have no power. They never did.
I mean, I can't put that one on the Greens. That's not on them. That's not on them. Media spin.
But it's important to bring that up because those are the fronts that they should be fighting. They shouldn't be trying to fight the Labour Party and the Liberal Party at the same time. But as you said, Tommy, like it's that grand struggle for power. The curious thing for me is that, like, I don't think Scott Morrison is very good at spin. I think he's very bad at it. I think he loses a lot of opportunities. That's the annoying thing.
Everyone keeps calling him like a marketing maestro, which I understand. But he failed at his job at Tourism Australia. And the only reason he gets away with this kind of shit now is because the entirety of the media ecosystem is on his fucking side.
That's correct, Tommy. And not only that, his opponents are so bad at spin. If they took watch fucking, I think it's like season 4 or 5 of Parks and Rec, where they basically go through an entire political campaign for Leslie Knope to get her to mayor. Now, obviously, that's pop culture, but that's sort of like 101 on how to spin things, how to control the narrative, how to bounce back from bad narrative. I can't understand why none of these politicians, especially Anthony Albanese, and let me go on, I know we don't want to attack Labor, but I want to pose this question. Why are these people so bad at political spin?
Well, I mean, look, I brought it up before. I think like Albo's a bit too honest. He's too much of like, I'll just answer the question because that is the principal thing to do. It's similar to Barack Obama and Michelle Obama's rhetoric of, if they go low, we go high. Sort of, it's in another way, another idealism that in this instance is not serving them well. Now, I will say, like, I think they do it, but they just do it to a much lesser degree.
Because I would be going tough. And even with his address right there, there was a beautiful opening to attack the Liberal Party. Like Adam Brandt had the ability to turn around and say, look, what is currently happening under the Liberal Party is coal-fired plants are closing early because they're becoming financially unviable, and those people are on their ass. We would like to introduce a scheme that gets them retrained for free in an emerging industry that's going to generate cash flow. Boom, 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 boom. And you can attack the shit out of the current government that's in control. Whether they realize it or not, the Greens are not, in my honest opinion, even if we see a hung parliament, even if we see a massive protest vote, even if we see a lot of independents come through, I don't think the Greens are going to see a resurgence in this country anytime soon. I think, honestly, this could be their death knell, to be perfectly frank with you.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Like, I think because the Greens failed so much, that's why the Climate 200 people are rising so strongly.
Yes.
It's because they're basically Greens but with neoliberal politics, and that's it. So, and that worries me somewhat. But like at this point in time, again, I'll take anyone who takes a seat off a Liberal, and those guys are fighting predominantly in Liberal-held safe seats, not Labor seats. So I'm gonna at this point in time, I'll take them over the Greens. But in whatever seat you are in, just take out the Liberal Nationals. Just do that.
Yeah, because I think when it comes to like the Climate 200 group, my honest belief is that they're actually being built up by people who used to be aligned with the moderate faction of the Liberal Party. I believe that's who they're being backed by, and that's where they are going after those seats. You know, we saw the pilot program, if you will, when Tony Abbott lost his seat. And you're going to continue to see those sort of Liberal seats disappear to more moderate conservatives, or as Tommy calls them, neoliberals. I mean, realistically, they're one in the same, to be fair, or, you know, they have that veneer of progressivism, but they really aren't. So, you know, like more power to those people. I'd like to see more. I honestly think that a more balanced system often works with more moderate people on both sides of the political aisle. Sometimes I think that when it comes to progressives, they don't always think it through. I think when it comes to people on the right side, they'll court people like the alt-right, and they'll make it harder for everyone else. And they're not about equality; they're about creating these culture war issues. So everyone's distracted from what is actually going on in the world, and how people are being brutalized and harmed by these systems that the people on the alt-right create. So I like to see a lot more moderates on both sides of the political aisles, and then it forces those people are more likely to cooperate as well when it comes to good policy. Like, there's no reason that in this country that we can't have conservative moderates, progressive moderates working together for the benefit of the country. And in all honesty, that's probably the one democratic system that would actually progress and keep everyone relatively comfortable and happy. The Greens are going with extreme approaches. They've done this before. They're going to do it again. And, honestly, Bant is a really bad leader as well. He comes across nervous, quiet, meek, sort of a bit snivelly as well.
I guess. Like, I felt he was kind of
charisma.
Yeah. Like, I kind of felt he was a little bit more confident there. Like, he seems to know what he's talking about at the very least. For me, it's just the concern about the Greens from the past, he has not addressed. And that's my main issue, right? I mean, the Greens have always had better policies in terms of progressivism and everything like that. They're going to be shit on foreign policy, but that's fine. You can let other people handle that. But like, my issue is that if they get in and they hold the balance of power and they do this kind of shit, are they going to be as idealistic and stop progress? That's my issue, and I don't think he's meaningfully addressed that concern for me.
It's a valid issue, and if the Labor government gets in on a protest vote, they'll also lose that government having to kowtow to an extremist Greens philosophy as well, which is exactly what happened before. So, it's
Yeah. I wanted to bring that up just because it's like, hey, okay, the Greens, they're the same. That's unfortunate. It could have been a better scenario where they were like, yeah, we're just going to attack the Liberal Party, but no. So, Matt, you wanted to bring up this thing.
Yes.
And I haven't read this, so I don't know what's going on, but I think this is an example you said of the difference that the media takes. So this is a gaffe from the Prime Minister, apparently.
Yep.
So Matt, if you want to read this out.
Okay, so this is meant to be what's considered an out of touch article. So Prime Minister grilled over campaign gaffe. So if we start to scroll down there, the first video that you see is a propaganda video from Scott Morrison. First thing you see, right?
Yeah.
So they're already, I want to talk a little bit. The reason I bring this up is because, one, this applies to the election, but it's also hitting on an important thing. And I want that to be is media literacy, which we are really suffering with these days. So I want to point out a few little tips and tricks here where you can, you'll be able to actually get real information. You'll be able to discard the rest.
All right, Matt, do you need me to play the video, or is it just mostly in the article?
We don't need to. It's
All
just mostly in the article. But yeah, that's a minute and a half of him touring a boat, and everyone loves him. So already in a negative article, we've seen a lovely video for him. All right. So if you scroll down, Prime Minister Scott Morrison has suffered his first major campaign gaffe, incorrectly stating the rate of JobKeeper while being quizzed by journalists in Perth. It had so far been smooth sailing for Mr. Morrison, who had yet to experience the same slip-ups that continued to plague Labor leader Anthony Albanese on the hustings. I think they meant to say costings.
Yeah, costings,
maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
So
Jesus Christ, news.com.au. Fix your shit.
Editorial in Australia has been absolutely trimmed to the bone. Most people won't know this, but Fairfax Media, for example, they off-source a lot of their editorial to the Philippines and New Zealand. They probably won't like me talking about that, but that's one of the things they do. Obviously, news.com is probably doing the same thing where they're offshoring their editorial so that there's no one sitting in front checking this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So this is a big deal. It's a more like they keep saying that Albo has been suffering all of these gaps all week. This has been happening to Anthony Albanese. It's been a plague. Yes. Yeah. It's horrific. It's biblical. He made one mistake on Monday that he owned up to and corrected. So that was Monday.
He's been very solid since then, by the way.
Absolutely. So when I say Monday, that was Monday last week. Okay. So no, he hasn't been plagued, but this is important. This is why we say that the media is biased in this country at the moment. Okay, so on Monday, being today, Mr. Morrison incorrectly said JobKeepers were paid $46 a week while answering a question on the cost of living. The actual figure is $46 per day. Now, not really a big deal, honestly. That sort of gaffe right there, it's one of those ones where it's like, oh, I meant to say day, so it's not really that big a deal. And then they've got a slightly constipated looking Scott Morrison just underneath. Labor's Jason Clare was quick off the mark to highlight the error and took to Twitter to call for the Prime Minister to correct the record. Today, Scott Morrison got the jobs seeker rate wrong, not by a little. He was out by $276 a week, he said. Will he come out and correct the record? Again, Labor, probably this isn't the best thing to be doing. And that's why they've put that in this article, because, Jason Clare is probably not, it's not really a good attack campaign. It's conflating this gaffe with the one that Albanese had last Monday. So, that's why they've chucked it in there, to make Labor look like they're whiny people. They're like, we did it. Now they're making them look whiny. So, that's why that's in there. Hundreds of social media users pounced on the gaffe, as did Network 10 political editor Peter Van Onselen.
Okay, so Cookie just said in the chat that hustings is correct. It means out on the campaign trail, which is something I didn't know. So thanks for that, old man.
Thank you. Yeah, no, we appreciate that. Oh, look, and Roy's in there as well. Look at that. I didn't even know that. Sorry, I haven't been looking at the chat because we've been having such a great discussion this week. So, that's essentially the problem. Now, as soon as we get past Labor saying, hey, and Olsen saying, hey, you should correct the record, we immediately go straight back into political spin zone, straight back into the campaign, with Mr. Morrison's final event of the day was at a BMX club in Electorate Pierce, which will receive a $1.6 million investment to redevelop its track facilities.
Yeah, what the fuck does that have to do with... Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, keep going. Just keep going. Yeah,
exactly
just keep going.
Right. Yeah.
Keep going.
The Prime Minister was swamped by young BMX riders, one of whom, after getting a handshake from Mr. Morrison, said he was never going to wash his hand again. Now, I don't think I have to go much further than that. Now, at the top of this,
is that real?
Well, look, if that's what this person is reporting, maybe they witnessed it on the day. I don't know. I'm not sure. But it sounds like a Simpsons quote to me. Specifically, I think it was Bart. At a certain point, he meets a celebrity or a girl touches his hand or something like that. He refuses to wash his hand and then gets stuck to the dog. Stuck to Santa's little helper.
I get that, but it's like, okay, like I understand like Bart fawning over a girl because he hormones, etc. We get it. But a young person, a young BMX bandit, if you will,
nice. I like that.
going up and being like, "Oh my God, I want to bang Scott Morrison." It's completely like what? Young people don't give a shit about politicians. This can't be real. I reckon this is bullshit. I reckon this is fake, man. I just like what this.
Yeah.
In what world would this exist? Who is this person? Show them to me.
Yep. Now, on top of that as well, whether or not this young individual really exists or not, I don't know. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. Like Tommy said, maybe it could all be a fiction. They're also talking here about a very important issue, $1.6 million for a BMX track upgrade. Is this an example of pork barreling? Why aren't we talking about that? So that's possibly circumventing a scandal that is going to come out later. So what Murdoch Press is already doing is they're setting it up as a positive.
Yeah.
Right? These kids want this. We're bringing it to them, whether it's pork barreling or not. And, you know, it's almost like they're preventing an attack down the track. So that's something important to understand as well. If we scroll down a little bit past that paragraph, on the way out of the venue, Mr. Morrison was briefly asked about his slip up earlier in the day. I misspoke.
So that's how it ties. So that's how they tie that shit in.
Yep.
Okay.
So they tie it back through. Asked to name the correct job seeker figure, he did so. The Prime Minister refused to answer questions about whether he was out of touch with people on the unemployment payment. It comes as Mr. Morrison left the door open to a deal with Teal independents in the event of a hung parliament. The coalition is under pressure in several blue ribbon seats across the country from challenges with links to the Climate 200 movement. The Prime Minister was asked twice if he would rule out forming an alliance with the so-called climate independents during his press conference, during his Perth press conference. Again, once again, allowing him to campaign again in an article that was meant to be about him having a gaffe.
Yeah.
Right. So if you were to do a word count here, and then once we go all the way to the bottom, again, they talk about, climate policy. They just politic.
Yeah. They're basically just like either just allowing him to speak about other shit.
Yes. This is what we are talking about when it comes to media bias in this country. And the scary thing is that news.com is one of the most read news sources in this country. So what they're doing is they're sneaking you in with one title. They give you just enough of it to make it feel credible. And then they present to him a solid platform for which they are politicking for a political party, which is why this country needs an independent media body that is willing to penalize journalists, that is willing to penalize, News Corp, Fairfax, even the ABC. There needs to be a regulatory body that stops this shit from happening. The reason I say that is because when I worked for Fairfax as an account manager, that means that it was my job to go meet and greet business people and buy ads off them and so on and so forth. There is a very specific set of rules that are legislated about how you politically advertise. Now, I'm sorry, but reading that article, that screams to me advertorial. That doesn't scream to me news item. This is the news, this is the headline. The subject should follow on from the headline. That's all that should be talked about in that particular article. But instead, it's a mouthpiece for the Morrison government. So this is my warning to Australians. This is my warning to people watching the stream. Make sure you are media literate. You have to be so careful with this amount of information coming at you all the time. You've got to really be able to find the fly shit in the pepper, as my stepfather used to say quite often. But it's really, really important.
Okay.
Yep, find the fly shit in the pepper, because what we've got is a mouthpiece for the Liberal government. They are, whether, I'll leave it up for people who understand the law better than I do. Whether or not this is in violation of political advertising, I'll leave up to more knowledgeable people, but it smells. It's very, very fishy. And when one political party has the side of this media, and it's specifically this website, which has such a great reach, I really worry about the state of democracy in this country, because this is the information that normal Australians are receiving every single day. And that's why I wanted to bring it up as we go into this election campaign, so that people are a bit more aware about the shit that they're being fed.
Yeah, I'm looking right now. I just looked up the Albanese GAFFE on news.com.au to get a sense of like the titles of the articles. Like, I don't think they do a similar thing with him.
No.
Where they'll just allow him to speak. So this is him speaking. Oh, god damn. All right, look, never mind. We're not gonna deal with that. Okay, Matt. So this today, they had Albo came out and introduced Jimmy Barnes, mate.
He did, yes.
And there have been things on the news about how he was being booed. And I was watching this and I was interested in it, because the first exposure I got to it was that he was being cheered and booed potentially. So I've got three different, hold on. I've got three different sources and they all sound different. So I want to get your take on this, right? So, yeah, we're just going to, oh shit. I forgot. I need to do this through that thing. Okay. So we're going to go through this and we're just going to listen to the audio and see, make a stance on that.
Happened as well when he came out on stage. But can I just make the point?
Oh, it's not good either way, is it? Stella, was he being
booed
or cheered?
Wait, no, it was further back.
Bounce back from this, and this leaders' debate here in Brisbane on Wednesday will be crucial. He really needs to do a good job, and there's no doubt he's focusing 100% of his efforts on that.
And Stella, last night Anthony Albanese was at the Byron Bay Blues Fest. Here's a look at him on stage.
You hear?
It's great to be at Blues Fest. I begin by acknowledging the traditional owners and land on which we meet.
Oh, it's not good either way, is it? Stella, was he being booed or cheered?
I want to listen to this through, because it's actually like Labour positive for once. It's incredible.
It really was a mixed reception. When he first arrived with his partner Jodie Hayden, he did a little bit of a walkthrough before watching the Waifs perform, and there was a lot of high-fiving, a lot of hellos, a lot of elbow bumps, a lot of people really excited and happy to see him. It was when he went on stage to introduce Jimmy Barnes that we did hear some booing, but to be fair, we also heard cheering. It seemed the boos really started when the mention of a federal election happened, and then subsequently the boos happened as well when he came out on stage. But can I just make the point that it takes incredible guts to do what the opposition leader did last night, to get up as a politician at a music festival.
This?
You know,
I'm shocked.
Of course, boos were expected. It's just the sentiment of the Australian people at the moment. There's a lot of frustration, and we've talked about this before. But I do think that he did a good job, and it was very gutsy. He handled it really well, guys.
Yeah.
Well said, Stella.
Oh, she's fired.
Yeah, well, she's for Channel 10 at least. Like, if she was on Murdoch Press, that's it. All right.
No, well,
so there's
Channel 10 is actually now owned by CBS America. So, you know, that's that whole Paramount network and all that shit. And the Packers have an interest in there. So I'm sure like there was a phone call to her editor. Friendly Geordies have pointed this out many times before, but you know, the Project is also on Channel 10. And the Project is one of those, like they do exactly what the Greens Party does, which is the, the Liberal Party and the Labor Party have done nothing to solve this issue, even though the Liberal Party's been in power for 12 years.
Yeah. All right. So here's another one. This is from a YouTube channel called True Blue Aussie Patriot, right? And they've hashtagged this gutless Albo, hashtag each way Albo, etc., etc. So we're going to listen to what this audio sounds like. It is different.
G'day. It's great to be at Blues Fest.
Like, I still hear more cheers.
Acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet. Pay my respect to elders.
Well, what's interesting actually, Tommy, from that angle, it sounds like there's actually more cheering than boos, as opposed to the Channel 10 footage, which sounded about 50-50 to me. Do you know what the response from Jimmy Barnes' son has been?
We'll go into that. Yeah, well, I actually don't know. I just I saw that as a link from the article that you posted. But if you look at the comments, oh, this one doesn't have it. If you look at the comments, so what's interesting is, okay, this is the one. This is from Sky News. This one.
Anthony Albanese.
Gone through northern Tasmania,
parts
of Melbourne, Sydney.
Labour leader introduced age after inspecting travelling with his team and
damn it.
More than his beloved kid enjoying the crowd before introducing the working class man.
Australians have been magnificent over the last couple of years. And what we want is a government that backs the arts sector.
Like, you can barely hear it in this one.
Yeah. It sounds to me like there's one very angry guy at the front. Like, are you saying boo or boo earns?
There's like two
boo earns.
There's probably, and that's what the first impression that I got when I heard the footage is. Like, there's probably two people booing. There seems like a fair amount of cheering. Like, you can hear people trying to do the whistling. But under the Sky News YouTube thing, there's just lots of attacks on Albo, and this guy who keeps posting that one clip, that one YouTube channel from that other thing that we looked at already. He's in like every reply. He's in there posting that video. So I thought that was interesting to see things from every perspective, because there will be Sky News articles and stuff like that about how he got booed at this like working class event or whatever it is. But it doesn't seem that fucking bad to me, and it doesn't seem like the media is as of yet making it a massive beat up. But there probably will be some articles about it, I think.
I think there might be one or two, but it's going to be pretty hard to push this one, because it's, even from various different angles, it's really, really hard to get a distinct booing noise out of it. Do not be shocked if they don't start editing it.
Yeah.
Do not be shocked if you don't see that start happening.
But yeah, he wasn't here. But Albo was there. He was invited by Jimmy Barnes to be there, and his son said Albo was definitely a guest at the event and most certainly not a gatecrasher. Albo was invited and welcomed because he has an arts policy which aligns with what my dad thinks the entertainment sector of this country needs.
Yep.
And I think that's pretty cool that he has Jimmy Barnes on his side. Like, hopefully that should sway some people, right? I mean, he's a very pretty influential person, right? Very Australian.
As long as he's careful. As long as he's careful. Because what we've seen happen in America, and unfortunately the American sentiment has just found itself embedded in our political system, in our general population. Celebrity endorsement can be fucking cancer to your political campaign. People have said, rightly or wrongly, but they've said that Lena Dunham's endorsement of Hillary Clinton helped to lose her that election. They've talked about how with the QAnon conspiracy movement, the belief that left-leaning celebrities are harvesting your children's adrenochrome, that they now say that, celebrity endorsement is not what it used to be, and you have to be very, very careful. Jimmy Barnes is an Aussie bloke through and through. He's beloved. He is the working class man. Honestly, if you are going to have a celebrity endorsement, I couldn't think of anyone better than Jimmy Barnes to do that, as long as they're very, very careful. Like, every time it ties back to jobs is good, Jimmy Barnes has said, look, we're aligned with him because his arts policy is something that this country needs.
Yeah.
Another good one to be rubbing shoulders with.
Yeah.
Sorry,
okay. So just really quick, Matt. So, actually, I'll move myself a little bit here. So if you see at the bottom of the screen here, there's a little video. I think it's actually a very good example of what we've been talking about all stream. Stop it. What are you? God damn it. Okay, the title
depends what they're promising up here.
Okay, the title for this thing says Albanese gets mixed reception in Byron, right? According to this thing by news.com.au from, people managing the event, like, most support acts get booed, as do most politicians at these events. But from where he stood, Albo went over really well with the crowd. Most importantly, he told me after Albo left stage, the gig was massive and everyone had the best night. And so that kind of headline, Albanese gets a mixed reception, right? So they can't just say that he got rolled at this event. there was a little bit of a booing. And so they're framing this as Albanese gets booed rather than talking about how his policies are taken well by the entirety of the music industry and from a rock legend.
Yep.
Which is what, like, you know, if we had a left-wing press, would be fucking being blasted out everywhere, and what should be happening, which is seemingly a more accurate interpretation of what went down. But literally everyone, even that Channel 10 stuff we looked at, didn't mention any of this policy shit.
No,
it was all about the booing.
Yep. Every event that Albanese now goes to, every event that Scott Morrison goes to, they're going to be talking about one key policy. When you look at that horrendous article I read about the job seeker GAFFE, obviously Morrison was there to announce a policy. What was that policy? You know, $1.6 million to improve a BMX track. That's what they were there to talk about. Anthony Albanese went to this event to talk about Labor support for the arts. They're not going to talk about it, or they're going to, you know, it's going to be hard to come across that information. As we've seen, and we're going to see consistently through this, the media is not interested in talking about Anthony Albanese in any way, shape, or form. Again, to the point where I think we need some sort of integrity commission set up to independently assess media, to be honest.
You can't do that because that kills, that will absolutely destroy your election chances. I can't remember who it happened to, but someone was proposing that. And they're like, no, okay. And then the Murdoch press was like, nah, you're done. That's it. Game over.
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, look,
it's a hard line.
I think I mentioned this on last stream. Like Jacinda Ardern said, you know, why are we not experiencing the same thing in our Western democracy as other Western democracies are? And she said, we never let Murdoch press set up in New Zealand.
Yeah.
And she's 100% fucking right.
What I think should happen is if Labor wins, because one of the things about like managing the press is they'll go against you, right? But one of the first things I think Labor should do when they get in, because the game is so rigged against them, they're getting fucked over by the press regardless. So when they get in, ICAC immediately, and then right after that, like a royal commission or some kind of thing into the media in this country.
Yes,
and they should just do it.
Agree.
Because even if the Murdoch press tries to destroy them, they're going to do it anyway. So you have, like, Labor has nothing to lose from that move. So they should do that kind of stuff. I think if they go in, like, if they don't, it's a missed opportunity because that will, I think, have a much greater effect for them being re-elected and for the Liberal National Party and corrupt politicians in general never to get a foothold in this country from that point forward. So I think that's super important. I don't know if they'll do it. But if it was me, that's what I would do.
100%. It needs to happen in this country. It's absolutely disgusting. The fact that Murdoch Press was able to create such a vast monopoly, you know, owning Sky News, having Sky News feature on public broadcasted television, having news.com.au, having all the mastheads he has, trying to bring it, you know, owning a controlling share in Fox subscription services here, also wanting to bring in a version of Fox News to Australia. I mean, all of these things are not great. And the monopoly that he only has it because a Conservative government has been in his pocket for the last 13 odd years. So, you know, something to think about and something to consider going forward. Tommy, is there anything else you wanted to talk about before we get to the polls?
Let's get to the polls. Unfortunately, they haven't updated it. They normally do it on the Monday, but since it's a public holiday, they haven't. So, I mean, I guess we did talk about this anyway, but here's the polls. It's going to narrow from what I think is going to be here because, of course, but while that page decides to, you know, be slow and load, it was a 57-43 in the two-party preferred from Roy Morgan. And some other economic data going on over there. Oh, there we go. All right. Yeah, so it was basically unchanged more or less since last time. We talked about it.
We're staying consistent. The bookies aren't so sure though. The coalition have shot from $3.15 underdogs to $1.85 favorite after this week.
That half, damn.
To Australian bookmakers, which is just that's a bit of fun if you want to put up money for this sort of stuff. It is interesting, but it is also not a scientific poll. So just be very, very careful considering that. The current payout for the TAB, which is one of our biggest betting agencies in Australia, and the only reason I bring this up is just because we don't have much Roy Morgan data to talk about. So this is kind of fun. The TAB, the coalition, is currently seen at $2.35. A Labor payout would be $1.60. While other parties are listed as $67 because no other party other than Labor or Liberal would ever win controlling interest in this government. Sportsbet is fairly similar, seen at $2.40, and Betfair all the way down the bottom has the coalition at $2.55. They still have it as Labor will win, but that's a massive reduction in the betting pool from last week, which I checked. I think it was seen about $3.75.
You know what I should have done, Matt? I should have put a shitload of fucking money on the Liberals winning. Because here's the thing, right? If the Liberals win, I'm going to be gutted, but at least I'll be rich.
Yeah.
Right? If the Labor loses, I'll lose all my money, but I know the country will be in a better place, so I probably won't need as much of that money. So,
well, I mean, I've still got some. I've even got some opinion polling from the other news agencies as well. News Poll has it.
Oh yeah,
at
fucking
53.
News Poll. Yeah. Hold on.
They have it
I can,
at 53
that's on the front
to
page
47.
of the Australian.
Yeah, you should be able to find that there.
Yeah, there it is.
Essential.
You can't fucking. Well, can you trust News Poll? Like they're partisan, aren't they?
You got to be careful of all of these polls, to be honest.
I guess that's true.
You know, Essential still has it at 50 to 45 Labor coalition. Ipsos is 51 in favour to Labor at 42 for coalition. And as we said, Roy Morgan is seen at 57 to 43.
It's so goddamn annoying that made Anthony Albanese -3 points. In terms of the preferred prime minister, what does this motherfucker need to do? Well, he needs to basically be an angel, but up till this point, he's done basically everything fucking right. I just don't I don't know what you tell him to do, to be better. You know, what would you say to him?
If it was me, if I had Anthony Albanese's ear, which I certainly don't, I would be right now. I would be attack. He has to get meaner. He has to get tougher, and he has to get better at spin. And if that means avoiding a question and spinning it back to hit the Liberal Party in the guts, that's what he has to do. And he has to be mean. He has to be tough, and he has to start doing a lot of whataboutism. You know, the Conservatives are very, very good at whataboutism. That's what he needs to do. Every time they say, hey, you know, we don't know if you're going to be a good economic leader. Well, let me tell you, the Morrison government has not been a good economic leader. They gave out millions and millions of dollars to businesses that didn't need it. That was taxpayers' money. That's now gone out into the ether and we'll never be able to reclaim it. I'm going to be a better economic manager than that. So that's what he has to do. No more wishy-washy shit. They're the enemy. Go on the attack and go hard, because and take every single opportunity to attack, because Morrison's already started attacking him right now. Morrison has, they're a little bit late to this attack party. So Morrison's already started building the narrative. Oh, they can attack me. They can attack me, but that doesn't mean anything. Well, no, they need to be attacking. They need to do it, because where they're losing is the media wants sound bites. They're not giving them sound bites. And we shouldn't be giving information that way, but that's what needs to happen.
There's one that's somewhat effective that they're doing about the whoever's replacing Greg Hunt. Because I think she's very... I can't remember it. No, she was like, yeah, I want to defund... Like, she didn't explicitly say this, but that she didn't want to have Medicare exist, essentially. And I think that's a pretty good attack line. So the narrative that's been boiled down by the ABC in various places this week has been, it's both sides are attacking each other. One is on, obviously, economics. That's all the Liberal Party have as an attack. And the Labor Party are attacking it's a scare campaign, both doing scare tactics. Scott Morrison is attacking the Labor Party on immigration, and the Labor Party are attacking the Liberal Party on what I just said, which was Medicare. So
Yep. And
yeah,
now,
they're doing
Anthony
it. But
the Labor Party needs at least every week to be announcing 10 poll announcements. Each and every week, they need to come out with something interesting in order to capture the media. They need to basically present them with such a big fish that they can't not talk about it. You know, okay, people are worried about their coal mining jobs. Anthony Albanese should come out tomorrow and say, this is how we're going to keep coal miners not only in a good job, but we're going to get them a better job with more pay. This is how we're going to do it. And then as soon as they go to attack them on that, they announce another, like they've just got to stay ahead of the Liberal Party spin. And if they can stay ahead, keep making announcements and attack Morrison hard. And it's so easy, Tommy. They can attack him on flood response. They can attack him on bushfire response. They can attack him on COVID management, economic management. They can attack him on sex scandals. They can attack them on, you know, I mean, there's so many things you can attack them on. NBN is another big one. They can attack them on all of these things. Here's another policy. The Greens announced just recently that if they had some sort of controlling interest, they'd try and bring free NBN to 1.35 million Australians. The Labor Party should be doing that. That's what the Labor Party should be doing. Why isn't the Labor talking about extending Medicare to include dental care? That's something that they could hit on. So there's a lot of stuff that they could do. My gut instinct tells me that they're holding off towards the end of the election because they may not feel that they have enough to stay ahead of the Liberal Party to keep out spinning them. But if they've gone into this campaign unprepared, then that is a massive shortcoming from the Labor Party because their campaign has been written for them. So that's all fair.
Like one issue that is always going to, I think, temper that kind of campaigning is what happened last time. Right? They had the big bold policies, the big populist stuff, and literally and that can just be debunked. Well, not debunked, but like defanged by the media just to hammer home. Oh, how are you going to pay for that? You're just going to get a wall of that, like you did last time with Bill Shorten and
I mean, they could
expansion of Medicare, right?
If they just focus solely on working class issues. Some of like the reason that and I don't disagree with many of Bill Shorten's policies. I thought they were good policies. The one thing that they got absolutely nailed with was policies that seem to be too progressive. So if they refocus on announcements for the working class and reframe everything as working class, it would be rather difficult for them to attack. But they do, like, if they want to win the media landscape at the moment, they've got to go big or go home.
Yeah. They're never going to look. They're never like that's the things. They're never going to win the media landscape because they will do some things I think that are quite good, like the policy with like we just brought up with the Jimmy Barnes thing, right? I have no fucking idea what that policy is. No one's fucking talking about it, but clearly it's there. Jimmy Barnes fucking knows about it, but I don't. And that's an issue with the media in general, right?
Yeah. Even with those sort of policies, though, and this is why I say they need to be reaching, you know, the working class. You know, a policy that involves the arts is not going to be something that's going to interest the vast majority of Australian voters, right? What is going to interest them is how is their cost of living going to be reduced? How are they going to have access? You know, if clean energy is the future, how does every Australian transition comfortably to that future? That's where the policy can come into play. And I think that's where they haven't said anything about what their clean energy policies are outside of they want to have them in place. They haven't told me how they're going to, you know, like they've said, look, we want to bring the electric vehicle industry to this country. That's great. Talk about it more. But like you said, Tommy, if you feel that that's a negative strategy that they could take announcing big things, then what they really need to up is their attacks.
Yeah.
Every single time
I'm all for the attack game. Like I said,
should be attacking.
I've said this multiple times. Like after what happened in the last election, I was like, I don't care how they do it. Like if it's fully negative, like because we so much whinging about the negativity of the previous campaign or whatever, and everyone's sick of negative campaigns and stuff like that. And I'm like, if it's effective, just do it. Just attack them. Just keep attacking the Liberal Party, and I think that's fine if they do that.
If anger is the only way to get to the hearts of voters at the moment, then do it, and do it hard, and do it. It's easy because Scott Morrison has basically written their attack ads for them, and they should really be utilizing that. But yeah. Well, there you go. There's another stream, week 1 of the election.
Yeah, we're gonna do for the upcoming weeks. Roy asked if we should do like cover like specific candidates. So I guess like going over like seats and things like that. And so maybe we'll do something along those lines.
Yeah, we should probably pick a couple of like at least, you know, have a look at candidates for each electorate, just to be like, hey, this is your electorate. These are your people. That's probably a good idea. Maybe we can help penetrate a little bit better. But yeah, that's a good idea. We'll probably do that next stream, covering some good candidates. We can start with the one going after Peter Dutton's seat. I talked about her last week. Let's do that.
Yeah, sure. That'll be a good one. Okay, we'll do this. We'll do Dixon, the electorate of Dixon, and then I guess we'll just go from there. See what comes. See who asks us what electorate they're in or whatever to cover. But yeah, we'll do that kind of stuff. I think the coverage our coverage at least, will increase in some capacity. I think, maybe. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what goes down. How this campaign goes forth. I think like when the debate comes, that'll be an interesting thing. I think there's a lot of really cool stuff that Albanese can do in terms of that debate, in terms of attacking Morrison and like deflecting off of that, because like it's so obvious what Scott Morrison is going to attack him on that I think in a debate he should be well versed to crush him in it. But we'll see what happens. Anyway, that's been the Modern Meltdown live stream for today. Apologies for everyone that it wasn't on Saturday, but Easter was a bitch this year. It was fun though. We had a lot of cool events. But it was
we did.
Yeah. And also Matt, you got some plugs, so go ahead.
Yes. So if you want to check out some of my other work, I host a podcast with my wife, Weird Crap in Australia. Every week we talk about a weird little piece of Australian history. We have been dubbed Australia's paranormal social historians, which I don't know how to take, but that is how we've been dubbed by some of our fans, which is very lovely. It is accurate. So if you want to get into some Australian history, we've probably covered more of it than you're ever going to find in a textbook, from the weird and the wonderful, all the way through to, you know, our bush ranger legends and up to some of the most strange political stories you've ever come across as well. Speaking of Medicare, Tommy, we covered the downfall of the Gulf Whitlam government, talking about that constitutional crisis. So if you want to know what Labor tried to do for you and did for you all those years ago, check out my podcast, Weird Crap in Australia, on any single podcasting app that you enjoy your podcasts. We've also got our new book, Weird Crap in Australia, Volume 3, coming out in September. Our previous 2 books, Weird Crap 1 and 2, you can grab in paperback from lulu.com and from our great mates at impactcomics.com.au. And you can also grab that on Kindle via the Kindle store. And you can find me on all the social medias, Weird Crap in Australia on Facebook, same as Instagram, and on Twitter, I'm hanging about. My handle is at Weird Crap in Oz, AUS.
Okay, Matt, one question, because you reminded me. Have you done an episode on the election fairy?
I have not done an episode on the election fairy. I've never heard of the election fairy.
Oh, okay. So, you should do one for the. I reckon it'd be cool. You could do one for the election. But yeah, it's he's just a dude. They just he's Anthony Green. He covers the election. They literally bring him out on the ABC just to do the elections. That's it.
Right.
He basically just goes, okay, here are all the numbers. Here's all the data coming in. This guy's going to win, or that guy's going to win, or whatever. And he basically, if he doesn't call it, elections ain't over yet, basically. And I think they even brought him over onto the BBC to do the Brexit as well. So he's a very good election analyst. But yeah, they call him the election fairy, and I think that ties in kind of neatly with your show, which is about myths and all that shit. So
Sounds good. We might actually add that in.
Yeah, look into that. It's probably not going to be that big a deal, but it's amusing.
Absolutely.
Anyway, that's been us. Hope you join us next week. We probably should be back doing the Saturdays. Yeah.
Should be back to Saturday, 12 o'clock. All of the disruption of last week is finally so should be back to our regular scheduled programming.
Yeah, sweet. We'll see you all then. Thanks for watching.